Hello, and welcome to the Telescope Show. We laugh, we discover God, and we totally nerd out. My name is Matthew Seipel Anderson, and with me is Katie Seipel Anderson and our dog Lucy, if you can hear her in the background. And we're super glad you're listening today. Hope you're doing well. We're doing well. Are you doing well?
I'm doing pretty well.
Yeah, I think we're doing well. We're getting over colds, but we're on the mend.
Yeah, and we're here with you. So what could be better?
What could be better? So, Katie, did you know that just a few miles down the road from us is a bio-repository? It's a room that is chilled to subarctic temperatures filled with biological human samples.
It's just down the road from us?
Just down the road. Well, in a nearby city.
Oh, I thought you literally meant down the road. And I'm like, I did not know that. That is very, very interesting.
Yeah, you know that creepy neighbor down the road?
Yeah.
You know what's actually in his basement?
What's going on here?
Ah! Well, today we have an interview with a fellow named Ethan Palmer. And Ethan Palmer actually works at a bio-repository. And he is an expert with role-playing games. And we know that many of you love a good role-playing game, including our dog. Can you hear her? Can you say something, Lucy? No, she just wants to smell the microphone.
No, she just wants to do it at a time that's not convenient.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's true. Dogs are like toddlers that never grow up.
They kind of are.
So our interview with Ethan Palmer is the feature content today. We're going to talk about role-playing games and biorepositories. And talking about it has gotten me so excited. Why don't we just jump right into our interview with Ethan Palmer? All right. Well, here we are sitting around my kitchen table, myself, Katie, and Mr. Ethan Palmer. Ethan, hello. How's it going today?
Good. Enjoying the beautiful weather outside.
Yes, it's amazing.
After 2 weeks of kind of nasty weather, we do have a very lovely day today.
It's about time.
Ethan has a crew of friends that play an RPG called Starfinder and has the idea of turning their game into a podcast. So,
okay, time out.
Yeah.
What does RPG stand for?
Role-playing game.
Oh, cool. Do you guys actually role play?
We actually role play. We do a little bit of voices. We have character motivations. It's fun.
Can I hear one of the voices right now?
Sure. I usually use this one for my character, Talvin. Very deep voice. He's a mechanic. It fits.
That's amazing.
That's great. Amazing. I love it.
That's just one.
And that was
just one of them.
That was actually one of the questions later on.
Oh, that's what I get for not doing my homework.
We're getting ahead of ourselves. We're getting ahead of ourselves. So here,
that was just a little taste. We'll have him do another one later.
To quote Nacho Libre, a little taste of the glory.
Good pull.
So I thought, we should get to know Ethan a little bit. So Ethan, you live in Winona, Minnesota, work in Rochester, Minnesota, but are you a Minnesota native?
That I am. I actually grew up in Jordan, Minnesota, which is close to Shakopee, if you know that kind of area. It's 20 minutes even further south than that.
Very cool. Okay. My kind of guy. I'm a Minnesota native. Katie was not born in Minnesota, though.
We're just going to move on. This is not about me. This is about Ethan today.
So, all right, Ethan, what are some of your favorite things to do for fun outside of tabletop gaming, which we'll get into later?
Big into video games, love movies, love all your Marvel content because I keep watching all those movies too, having our own opinions and talking about it. It's a lot of fun talking with my wife. Same sort of idea. Also love to paintball. It's been a long time, but that was something that I like to do outdoors.
Paintballing is something I've only done at bachelor parties, I believe.
That tends to be at bachelor parties and then church guys events. I've come across some of that too.
True.
A lot of the time, but used to play with a group of guys for probably 10, 12 years throughout the summers and in fall. And
doesn't seem as popular anymore. I don't think I hear of people playing it as much anymore.
It's harder to find groups to play with, unless you go to a professional course or something like that. For us, it was just a group of people who said, hey, we have all this equipment. Let's go play. And so we got to run around in a field for a while.
Do you still have the equipment?
I do still have the equipment.
So, okay, if you're out there and you're in the Winona area and you like paintballing, let us know.
Exactly. We'll start something.
That could be a great sound effect for your thing.
Yeah. CO2. Yeah, definitely.
So, what are some of your favorite foods and a few of your least favorite foods?
Ooh, my favorite foods. My mother-in-law's lasagna is a favorite. Love that. I don't really have a least favorite food.
Really?
I like to just try everything at least once.
Jell-O? Is it Jell-O?
I like Jell-O.
Oh, wow.
Jell-O's up there.
Okay.
Do you not like Jell-O?
I don't like Jell-O. That's like one of the few foods I actually don't like.
Is it a texture thing?
I think it is a texture thing. It doesn't really have like a taste much.
Then
like
you
just,
probably wouldn't like the shark jerky I've tried, the squid jerky I've tried, cow tongue. Have you tried that?
I have. That's not so bad.
Not so bad, but if you think about it, it's tasting
If you
back.
think about it, yeah. If you think about it, it's not great. But if you just eat it and that you don't like know what it is, it's not bad.
Exactly. Yeah.
So here's a question that we were talking about earlier. If you could pick one non-Marvel character to become part of the MCU, what character would it be?
See, this one's a real stinker because I like all the MCU characters and I'm like, I don't know who I would pull in.
Who would you pull into the MCU to have them killed off?
Oh. Yikes,
That's a little dark.
harder question.
Because I would choose Superman. I can't stand Superman.
Actually, I'm in that same boat. He's my least favorite superhero. You can't just be completely invincible and not...
Not
kryptonite.
completely
Yes, I know.
kryptonite.
But
Okay, that leads me to my next question, though. Yeah. So maybe I'm getting off here, but if you could give Superman an additional weakness besides kryptonite, what weakness would you give him?
he could still be invincible, but he could feel the pain of what he's doing.
That would be so killer.
It would make it so much more impactful when, he jumps in front of the person to protect him from the bullet or something like that, because he takes that impact. He'd feel it. So I think that would make it even more of an interesting character.
Yeah.
See, I instantly love Superman now. If it's the Ethan Palmer version.
Ethan Palmer
There we
version of
go.
Superman is much more likable.
Okay, so then what if you could take a Marvel character and pop it over into the DC universe? Who would that be?
All of them.
Maybe all the Marvel characters that die go into DC as like the Marvel
That's what it
afterlife.
is. That's how they connect all the multiverses now. Is that if they really add the DC ones in there. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if I would switch any of them over to DC. I don't think I'd put them in that punishment.
Fair enough.
Now, there's got to be some DC lovers out there, so I think you guys are just
probably.
offending all of the DC lovers right now. I wish I knew more
All
about the DC
opinion.
world, because then I would be the defender of the DC world. I just don't know that much about it.
We kind of like the Flash.
Yeah?
I like the Flash.
Flash is fun. But I still like Quicksilver, I believe his name is, when the MCU, even though, he got offed in Ultron. I still like him better. Yeah.
I don't know. I can't represent DC very well. We need to have another person on, I guess, to represent DC.
Yeah. So lastly, in our quest to get to know Ethan, tell us about the work you do at Mayo Clinic, because I think it's really fascinating.
And
Yeah.
mysterious.
And mysterious.
Mainly because no one knows what the word means. So I work at a bio-repository. So
That sounds a little sci-fi.
it does. It really does. It's a lot more mundane than you think.
Or it sounds like an outhouse.
Oh, yeah, that too. A bio-repository. That's great. No, so we get samples from all over the world, all over the country, skin, fluid, all types of fluid, all types of samples. And our job is to freeze it so that it can be put in essentially an archive, so that a research group can say, hey, we want this type of sample, this demographic, disease, whatever it may be, and we can have it readily available for them to do research with. One example of that is right now we're working on a COVID study that's going on for the next 6 or 8 years. And every 6 months, they're getting these samples taken. And at the end of that, they can take all of them that we have, lay them end to end, and see what changed, if anything, over that time for people who have had COVID.
Interesting.
Yeah, so my job is primarily to play with liquid nitrogen and dry ice in freezing these samples.
That sounds like a setup for a movie, though. Someone
yeah.
working in a lab like that could easily. I got like
Something
some sort of
goes
weird
wrong.
sample of something, and now I'm a superhero. The next one might be Ethan. Maybe that's who goes into
The next MCU character.
the next MCU character.
Be the next Bruce Banner.
Oh, man. That's super cool. So is there a huge freezer that these all get stored in?
So we can store 90 million samples. And we're at like
That's just a few.
26 million or something right now. A lot of them, they look like just giant canisters. It's really fun to take the top off because you get the big plume of LN2 gas coming out of there. I feel like you're in Star Wars with the carbonite.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's that first time, man, it was so satisfying. But yeah, we have these huge machines that just end up storing these things for years, sorts them out.
Well, let's talk about Starfinder.
Yes.
The RPG that you are an aficionado at.
I wouldn't say that. I do my best to be a player in the game that I'm playing.
Well, you're at least, are you the game master in this particular
That
realm?
I am not. I'm actually a player in that campaign. We just call the whole thing a campaign. It's actually run by our friend Chris.
Oh, nice. Very nice. So, okay, so you described this game, Starfinder, as choose your own adventure with rules. So can you just walk us through, as newbies, walk us through how this game works?
Yeah, so essentially, it's a group of people getting together. One person is in charge of the story. Sometimes that could be something that they have completely made up. Sometimes it can be a written textbook by whatever company had made the rule set. And you go through this adventure together. There's a lot of role play, like we talked about a little bit earlier, where we each get a character. They all have different stats. If you think of some video games, it's similar to like Skyrim or something like that, where you can put your stats in strength or charisma or things like that. And then you go through this adventure pretending to be this character and doing it however you want. You know, you may be given them an objective, and as a character, you can turn around, walk the other way, and find something else to do. It is very much a choose your own adventure. There are some rules like maybe combat or like these dice rolls that happen that help determine outcomes of things.
So the basic story is set up by the game master.
Yep.
And they have a predetermined idea of what the character's goals are and what they're supposed to be accomplishing. But then there's a lot of give and take with what you guys decide to do.
Oh, it is so much give and take. And it can be very rewarding or very annoying if you're the game master. Outside of this game, I ran my own game for about a year and a half with the same group of people, just, you know, different order. And yeah, there are many times I'm like, okay, I really want them to go this way. There's a city this way. There's a city on fire this way. They avoided the one on fire and went to the one I had no preparation for. So,
so then you as the game master have to
adjust. I get to improv, essentially. Okay. I don't know best way to describe some of it. Yeah, like in that circumstance, I had an idea of what my second city was be. I was really banking that my group would go to this first city on fire. It's in distress. They should go save the people and help them. No, they thought it was too dangerous. So they went to...
So they are not going to be part of the MCU as
they're not going to be a part of
superheroes.
they're not going to be my heroes, unfortunately. Maybe in our next campaign we'll see how their morals change.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great time of sitting around and basically playing make believe as an adult.
Right. With rules governing the behavior, because each character has abilities, and using those abilities, there's rules that govern all that in different situations. And
so I tell my players, we play with the rule of cool. If you have an idea and it's not in the rule book, I'll allow it, but I'll just come up with something. As long as it's cool and it makes sense to what you're trying to accomplish, it's cool. So one funny example that I've seen floating around the internet that's a great descriptor of this. So when you're rolling dice for your skills, you roll a D20. It's a 20-sided dice. If you roll a 1, that's a natural failure. So whatever you're doing, no matter what, you failed at it. If you roll a 20, it's a crit success. You've done perfectly whatever you wanted to happen, can happen as long as the DM allows it. I remember hearing one of there was this player who was playing a dwarf, and dwarves carry really heavy like plate armor. They're completely armored up or whatever, and they were trying to jump across this like 10-foot gap or something, and he had to do a skill check for it. So instead of just running and jumping, he said, hey, I'm gonna flap my arms real hard and see if I can fly over it. Well, the DM was gracious enough to let them say, okay, you can sure try that. And he rolled a nat 20. So his character flapped his arms so hard in plate metal armor that he flew across the gap that they were trying to cover. So that sort of shenanigans can happen. You know, that DM was really lenient on what they were doing. But
got it. So some other DMs might be like, no, you can't do that because that's too ridiculous.
Exactly. Like that doesn't follow the laws of physics even in a fantasy world.
Okay. So, but whether they decided to like run and jump or flap their arms or like become a worm and crawl down or whatever.
Exactly.
As long as they rolled the 20, they could have made it across.
They could have made it across, exactly.
So what would happen if they only rolled a 10?
If they rolled a 10, they might have been still successful. Usually there is like a challenge number associated with the task. So jumping over it could be like I say, you have to roll higher than a 12 in order to succeed. Even if they rolled exactly 12, they still succeeded. Maybe their character stumbled and rolled and got back up and they're fine. But if they rolled under that, oh no, they've now fallen. What are you going to do next?
Okay.
So there's a lot of creativity and really storytelling involved.
Yes. Very, ton of storytelling. Definitely.
How does the story develop in the game?
Again, it all depends. I've only what we call homebrewed my world and adventure, meaning I came up with it and some of the characters and things like that. So I had this story idea in my head that, so I start with a concept. Okay. I actually pulled from Lord of the Rings a little bit. I have this item of power. There's this big bad guy who wants to get it in order to return to this world, essentially. And so I throw my party into that, give them hints. Oh, they stumbled across this item of power. What are they going to do with it? What consequences does it have? And so the story really develops. The best way to think, I always put together plot points of, okay, they found the item. This is how they can destroy it. They get to figure out the in-between. So it can change session to session on, my plans based on their decisions. And again, that can be very rewarding or very annoying depending on what kind of a party you play with.
And then do you decide to throw obstacles in their path then?
Yes. So I throw the monsters in their way, their challenges, their dungeons, all of that I get to try to come up with to make it, more of a game. That's where the game portion of it comes in. There's a little bit of strategy and how you fight and the rules of all that. But there's also social challenges as well. They might have to talk to someone. They have to find information, get a clue, woo this person, impress this person to move forward. And again, that very much changes the story. Suddenly they have an extra ally that they didn't have before or a new enemy that I can play around with and throw at them.
So if you're the game master, do you also play? Or do you just manage the other people's playing?
I would say I do it. It's a little of both. So it's more like a referee role. So I come up with a story. I keep track of the rules and what they're doing, things like that. But, when they do come across, say, a shopkeeper, I get to be that voice. I get to be that person and act as that person.
Okay.
And so in a way, I do get to play. Usually I play as the bad guys, especially in combat. I can play as the monsters and, use their abilities against my players. And there's a real fine balance between, being fair, being mean, being too lenient on them based on the circumstances. So it's a challenge, but it's a fun one.
Do you think it's more fun to be the game master or to play?
I like both.
Okay. They're just different. Okay.
Exactly. It's I used to play in one and run one at the same time. And sometimes some of the ideas would bounce off each other like, ooh, I like that. Maybe I'll pull that into my game or use that for my character later on. So it's quite fun.
Well, that sounds awesome.
I have one more question before we move on.
Yeah.
Go for it.
What's like the end goal? Or is there an end goal?
Whatever you want it to be.
So is it just like the pleasure of making like a story kind of? Or is there like a win? In
my mind, it's pleasure making the story because you have this interesting cast of characters going through this adventure. They end up developing along the way. And depending on the players, sometimes they have really deep backstories, like their character changes along the way. Maybe they betray the party, things like that can be very impactful, just like any movie, TV show, radio show you listen to, and it can pull an emotional response sometimes.
Interesting.
For sure.
I had a question about the physical part of the gameplay. I know a lot of these games use miniatures.
Yes.
And somewhat of a board. My question is, how would you use any physical pieces when this is so in the imagination?
It's a lot of both. There's even people who don't play with boards or minifigures, and it's just called theater of the mind, where you're just telling the story and like saying what you're doing and just picturing it in your head.
And rolling dice and
rolling dice
going
and
through
all
the
that
scenarios.
as well. Which to me, it's a little harder to fight when you don't know where your enemies are physically, in my opinion. But there are people who play with boards, minifigures. Some people create these huge, massive like dioramas that you might see with terrain, trees, and actual physical 3D printed buildings and things like that. People get really intense into that. Our group actually uses a program called Foundry that we play all online.
Okay.
And so we can use those tools online, like grids and tokens and things like that.
Well, that's awesome.
Interesting. When you're setting up the game as the game master, or even when you're playing, how does morality play a role in this?
Yeah, so that's a lot of fun to play with, actually. So I think that is one of the greatest challenges so morality is a really interesting and kind of difficult thing to play with. Trying to add weight to the decisions that your party makes. Like, again, maybe they do take out that shopkeep. Suddenly the entire city is after them.
Right. Interesting. So when you're setting up the initial rules, do you take morality into account, or is it just when you're kind of setting up the game?
It's a little of both.
I was going to say both and.
Yeah, it's both and. It depends on the situation they get themselves into. And then, again, what do I want to present in the greater theme of the story as a whole?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
It sounds so complex and really fun from like a storytelling perspective. I love reading. I love stories. So I've never thought of this stuff before ever, but from a story and creative perspective, it's kind of cool.
Maybe we'll have to get you two in a game. Even if it's just like a one-off.
There
You
we
can be a
go.
background character that dies.
Yeah. Or lives. I mean,
you can still live. You just retire,
passes through. We go on our own adventure and we just pass through.
So I think most people, when they think of RPGs, do think of the medieval setting, like a Dungeons and Dragons type of game. But the game you play is actually, it's kind of based on the rule set of D&D, but it's completely different in that it's based in science fiction.
Yes, exactly. So it's called Starfinder, as sci-fi as you can get with a name like that. And yeah, it is exactly that. Just a different set of rules to go through an adventure. This one just happens to involve starships and robots and aliens.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, that's cool. So it's a little different. And you said that you're recording your gameplay with the hopes of making a podcast out of it.
Yeah, that is one of the hopes of it, a big hope. We have about, as I mentioned before, we have about 60 hours worth of raw audio that needs to be edited down and turned into a story with still some gameplay elements there of rules and things like that. But the majority of it will be following the adventures of these 5 characters who find themselves essentially lost in space, trying to survive, encountering things that mankind had not encountered at that point.
Interesting. So it's almost like an audiobook in podcast form is what it will end up kind of being.
Essentially.
Is that what I'm
basically
kind of hearing?
Yep. Or if you remember the old radio shows
I
like
was
Adventures
just
in
thinking
Odyssey
about
or something
that. Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
So it's a
thing.
so it will be a podcast of an RPG edited down to be similar to an audiobook.
That's a great way of explaining it. There we go.
I love it.
That's kind of cool.
And you have an idea of the working title for the show.
Yeah, we have the idea of Nat 1, the Big Ope. So as I
Sounds
explained,
Minnesotan.
that's exactly part of it. So the 6 guys that we play with, everyone's from Minnesota, so we had to add the Big Ope. We're calling it Nat 1 or Natural 1 because that's what it's called when you roll a 1 on your die. It's a critical fail, the Big Ope.
Got it.
Exactly. So
Nice.
that's the working title so far of at least the show. And then the season will most likely be called Spaces Between the Void.
Interesting. That must be related to the story in some way.
Exactly. Yep. Mankind has learned how to essentially do interstellar warp using wormholes. And so spaces between voids.
Cool. So we were chatting earlier about games and gaming being a great tool to bring people together and a great way just to share faith with one another.
I think it is a fantastic tool for storytelling in morality, in decision-making, even character building, as well as the outside effects of that, hanging out with your friends, being goofy, and having a way to fellowship in a different way. I know there's a lot of stigma, is that the right word? Towards D&D and kind of the church community. I know that it is this kind of evil demonic thing that, you know, shouldn't be touched or used, but I see it as a tool. A tool can be used to build a house or smash a finger. It all depends on how it's used. Like I said, it took a year and a half to get through one of my campaigns. That's, 3 hours a session, at least once or twice a month. I got to know these guys really well inside the game and out. And now we're able to rely on each other, go to each other if we need help. And it's fun when you're running a game to be able to present moral decisions and then talk about them later on, like what would you really do in this situation? Use it as a lead in to sharing my faith or at least encouraging someone along the way.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent opportunity, if you're a person of faith and you want to, reach out to your friends, show the love of God to people, start a game night. I mean, it's low risk. People love it. You'll have a great time. And what a great way to, like you said, just get to know people. When the time is right, God will open a door and you can share your faith. They'll come to you. You can help them. And that's awesome. I mean, what a great way to touch people in a low risk way.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be D&D. It could be Sorry or Jeopardy.
Although I kind of like this whole D&D idea because there's so much of a storytelling. It really you can present moral things, and you make your character do something. And is that what you would do? So now I just really want to hear one of your other character voices. I feel like we just really need to.
Oh yes.
Ooh, okay, I gotta think of one of them. Okay, here's one. Describe the person to me.
I want it to be an alien.
Okay.
From like the Star Wars, Star Trek, who is meeting a human for the first time.
Ooh. Oh, hello. Who are you? What are you? What's going? You have ears? What are those things on your? Oh, the glasses. Oh, okay, that's what they are.
Very nice, very nice.
I want to hear Katie do one.
Nope. I draw the line there.
I want to hear you do an alien imitating a real estate agent.
So I'll just talk right now, and that's probably what it's going to have to be.
Perfect. We'll use that for our collective game later.
Yeah.
And from now on, I'll tell people that my wife is out of this world.
Hey,
ooh, good one.
All right, well, I think this is a good place to wrap it up. Ethan, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
No problem.
This was a complete blast, so we'll have to do it again.
Definitely. I'll look forward to it.
All right, well, that was so much fun hanging out with Ethan.
So I actually really do want to take Ethan up on his offer to at least watch one of these games, because I do think that would be really fun to watch all the different role playing and see how that goes, especially with people that we actually know.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's great fodder for future conversations with them.
Yes, I feel like that will take our relationships to a new level. Or should I say, I think that'll take our relationship to a new level.
Love it.
Well, thanks so much for listening today. You can connect with us through email. You can email us thoughts, questions, whatever, at thetelescope@icloud.com. And we would love to connect with you on Facebook. Find us on Facebook or on the web. Our doc is just going crazy still. You can find us online at www.thetelescopeshow.com. You can connect with us through Facebook. Email us. We love to connect with you. And we also look forward to sharing some of the content from the Milwaukee Comic Con. We had a ton of fun there last weekend. And look forward to getting some of that stuff up very soon. So until then, love you all. God bless. Take care. Bye-bye.